Hi guys, welcome. We're going to be propagating my two most beloved favorite plants. I know it's sad, but I'm trying not to get sad for this video. I feel like I let my emotions out earlier today. There was some tear shedding. But we're not going to do that anymore. We're done. But I'm going to pull it together for this video and we're going to make it a teachable video. I have a Monstera albo here, my beloved Monstera albo, and my Monstera Aurea. I grew both of these plants from cuttings and they're very sentimental. And unfortunately, they have had root rot that they've been battling for several months now. I've been able to save some of my other Monsteras that had rot, but these two have been struggling the most. And honestly, I just don't think I can look at them any longer like this. It's making me too sad. And I tried to rehab my albo recently, and it looks very pitiful since I did that. I cut away the rest of the rot and have it in moss, and I just don't think that I'm going to be able to recover this plant based off of the root system that is left. And yeah, I'm just going to prop it and start over. My Aurea, I really was hoping she would recover. I gave her a drink last night because I hadn't watered her in like 2 weeks, and I was hoping this morning when I came in here to check on her that she would have perked up a little bit. Just gave me a little bit of a sign that there were some healthy roots growing. I haven't given up quite yet. There's a little bit of hope that I'm still able to salvage this plant, but we're gonna see. We're gonna dump her out and see. I haven't dumped her out in a few weeks now. It's time to check. I lost the two original leaves on her already, the yellowed, and the one here, the little one, this was the very first leaf that she gave me in my care. It's yellowing, so it's going. So that's 3 yellow leaves within a week. She either just isn't able to hold on to the bottom leaves because she is trying to conserve energy growing roots. So if there is some healthy roots in here, I'll have a little bit of hope. But if not, I think I'm just going to prop. I think I will do a hefty top cut for her, like 4 or 5 leaves, and stick the plant in water, and then I will show you how to propagate the rest of the plant. I'm going to do mid cuts. Same thing with the albo. Unfortunately, the top leaf is browning and looks quite bad, but I still think I will take a 2 or 3 leaf or 4 leaf hefty top cut and then do the rest mid cuts. I recently propped a albo, my other one that was rotting. I didn't film me actually going through the motion of propagating, so I want to do that for you guys, and I ended up putting half in water and half in stratum, and both of those vessels are doing well, and I'll give you a peek at those a little bit later. So yeah, I think we're gonna tackle the albo first because I feel like this one will be the easiest to do, and then we will dump the Aurea out. So we're gonna do her second. So when you're propagating Monstera or with any plant, I just wanna point out, make sure you grab yourself some isopropyl alcohol. This is 70%. And if you have a pair of shears, you can use shears. Definitely clean them with alcohol to sanitize any germs that may be on here. I had propped mine using shears, and then I completely forgot that I have an X-Acto knife, and I actually recommend propagating with an X-Acto knife. It basically is just a little blade for crafts. You can get this at any craft store. Again, I'm going to sanitize before I slice into the stem. But the reason I like an X-Acto knife versus a pair of shears is shears, when you cut into a vine, it kind of squeezes it, which bruises the ends, which can make the healing time a little bit longer, so it can make the plant more susceptible to rot. Definitely before I stick these in water, I'm gonna let them callus, sometimes even overnight. I'm gonna let them callus for a couple hours and stick them in the water. But the X-Acto knife is just one blade. It makes a clean slice, so there's less bruising, hence less rot. So that's a little tip I have. If you don't have an X-Acto knife, I highly recommend, especially when you are wanting to cut a thicker vine or a more expensive plant, having that sharp line in the tissue is going to be best. All right, Miss Monstera albo. I know we just did this and just potted her into moss, but we're gonna undo it. Yeah, I think I'm just gonna get rid of the root system. So yes, I'm not shedding any more tears for this video. Like I said, I've had my tears today. I've been kind of dreading doing this video. I've been putting it off for like a day. I really wanted to get to these yesterday, but I just couldn't bring myself to do it. And again, I've been upset all morning, so we are in the afternoon hours today. All right. I'm gonna save this moss for a moss pole, I think, because I just use this moss. Yeah, just all the roots are going, so there's just no stopping this rot. You can see how much rot is still on the root system, and I had just soaked the plant. I put some aerials down in there to see if that would help promote growth, but even the aerials are wanting to rot, so yeah, it's a no-go. Just removing the stake, so. It's really sad. I want to give you a little bit of an anatomy on Monstera albo in case you're curious on propagating them. And then I will give you kind of like an up close view of me actually doing the propagation. So kind of giving you an up close view. So the longer part on the stem here, that is called the internode. And then you have where an aerial root meets a bump, which is the node. Then you have another node, another node, another node, another node, 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 node. So basically where each kind of bump is a node, and each node should have its own axillary bud. And the axillary bud is where the new growth will come out. And sometimes it's hidden in this is the petiole where the leaf here attaches. So this is the petiole. And then if you follow the petiole all the way down, you'll see a little bump there right here, and that is the axillary bud. That little eye is what I call it, and that's where new growth emerges. And if you have a white stem, which the stem is pretty white, it's harder to see. Right here is another eyeball, so that is another axillary bud, which is new growth. And again, on this part, axillary bud here, and that's new growth. So when you're propping these, you basically want to make sure that you have an aerial root. Sometimes you have two, and you want to have an axillary bud. So make sure that when you're cutting this, that you're not actually cutting into the axillary bud, because if you don't have an axillary bud, then your cutting won't grow. It's basically a leafless cutting or a nodeless cutting, and it's just a leaf and eventually it'll die. So make sure, again, when you're slicing, to do a good way above or below the axillary bud. That's the main thing you want to look out for. So this is the very top leaf. This is the lead leaf. And so normally with the lead leaf, you have new growth that'll form out of the lead leaf. And this growth doesn't take too long to emerge. Sometimes it's a lot quicker than an actual mid-cut, because sometimes it just takes a little bit for the plant to reroute energy to actually push out growth from the axillary bud. So that's why when you're looking to get a cutting, sometimes it's, you'll see that top cuts are a little bit more expensive because of that growth coming out of here. I wouldn't cut into here without an aerial root, just like right here, because then it needs to have an aerial root to root. So I would cut below that, which would be, since this aerial root hasn't pushed out yet, I would actually do the cut here. So you'd have actually like a 3-leaf top cut, if that makes sense. So it just all depends. I mean, you probably could try and get away with cutting it here, but since that hasn't really pushed out, you might be better off just getting cutting below where you have an aerial root. So I hope that made sense. Again, since this plant is rotting, the roots, it's just not taking in any moisture. It's very sad. That's why you have the browning. I understand white parts of the leaves have less chlorophyll, hence they are more prone to browning. But in the almost 3 years of having a Monstera albo, this plant has never browned up until it got rot. When a plant is normally healthy and growing and receiving enough light, I find variegated plants tend not to brown. Sometimes there's nothing you can do to prevent it. It just happens with it being a white leaf. But I find in my experience with having albos for 3 years almost, if something is unhappy with the plant, then it's going to show it in the leaves. Usually it means there's something wrong with the root system. So if you do notice browning and it hadn't been there before, then I would definitely check the root system out. You could have some root rot going on. So if I can give you any advice, just aeration is super important. It's the biggest takeaway. Make sure you have a very aerated mix and it's not staying wet for too long. Aeration is so important. I recommend making your own DIY mix up. You can make it how you like, and your plant's gonna get the airflow that it needs so it doesn't rot. All right, I'm gonna bend you guys down a little bit closer so you can see me kind of snip this guy up close, and we're gonna do, like I said, this one first, and then we're gonna check the Aurea next. We are up close and personal here. So like I said, we are going to sanitize. This is our X-Acto knife. That's the blade. And this is our alcohol. Pour some alcohol on and we're just gonna clean it to get rid of any bacteria. I'm gonna start at the top and work our way down. So like I said, since there isn't a root system here, I'm going to cut below this one. But you have to be careful because within each leaf petiole here, down in here is another axillary bud, which is right here on this plant. So when I cut this, I'm actually going to cut, I could either cut really close to this aerial root here, or there's actually another aerial root right here that I can cut below, which I think I will do just to give me a little bit more room. Because if this starts rotting, if you cut it too close to this axillary bud here, so I'm cutting below here, I hope that makes sense. So if I cut too close and not include this aerial root, then if this rots, it's gonna rot into the node, and then this cutting is no good. So you just want to eye and look and make sure that you're kind of being careful with where you cut. So again, axillary bud here, axillary bud right here, and we're going to include these two aerial roots. So just make sure to cut way above this axillary bud. So I'm going to go closer to this aerial root right here, and we're just going to kind of slice into here. Like that. So this is our top cut now. So we have the axillary bud here, which a new growth can emerge, or it may just continue pushing from the lead leaf. Like I said, I could potentially have 2 growth points activating since I chopped. So yeah, I'm gonna let this in dry. It's very wet when you first cut, so we're gonna lay all of our cuttings out to dry before we stick this in water. And then it'll root, this will continue to root here. There's some new aerial roots here that could grow, so it can root off of multiple places. So that is our top cut, and I'm gonna snip the browning leaves off of these again, but I'm just gonna lay them all out here to dry. And make sure when you do each slice, I recommend cleaning with alcohol after each slice, just for sanitation purposes. Next cut, so we cut here, our top cut, so we have an axillary bud right here. And our next axillary bud is right here. So we want to cut in between, we want to cut right under this aerial root here. Easier if you have like a flat surface to do this on, because I'm trying to hold it up to show you guys. Okay. So we have a mid cut. So mid cut again, we have aerial roots and we have our axillary bud right there. So if you ever buy a mid cut, make sure that you have an axillary bud, because again, if you didn't have that bud, if they snipped it into it, or they cut it too short, then your Monstera albo will not grow without that. And we keep doing this all the way down. So again, we have our axillary bud right there, and our next axillary bud is right here. So right there, and then right here. So again, we're gonna cut just below this aerial root, right here. Trying to be careful because I don't want to cut into this leaf. Okay, our next little mid cut. So we have the axillary bud right there, our aerial roots. And you see how nicely clean the cuts were? So if I were to use the shears, like I said, it squeezes it, so it's more likely to bruise and potentially could rot. So that's why I like using the X-Acto knife. And you'll find some people, when this dries, they'll put a wax layer on the edges to prevent rotting. I haven't tried that at all. I mean, I haven't really had issues with rot. I mean, sometimes a stem will rot if you don't keep the water clean, especially. So that's really important when you are water propping. Just make sure the plant's getting a ton of light, number one. Change that water every like 4 or 5 days. If you start to see slimy, gunky stuff in your water or off the ends, rinse your plant in water really well to get rid of that and refreshen the water. So again, axillary bud is here and here. So we're gonna cut right below this little aerial root, right under here. Oh, I do want to point one thing out real quick. So it looks like there was a leaf maybe that fell off or didn't grow. It like skipped. There would have normally been a leaf here and cut below. So what I could do is I could cut this here. So I'm left with a node without a leaf. It's just a tiny little node. Like here's the aerial root. The axillary bud is right here. And I could do that, but again, when you're rooting these nodes like this without a leaf, it takes a really long time sometimes, and it's very risky. So what I'm gonna do is cut below that, and then I'll have, from this cut, I might potentially have 2 growth points that activate from this. So that's what I'm gonna do for this guy. So yeah, do you see what I mean? There's the axillary bud right here in the white, and then the axillary bud right here. So I could cut again and leave this little bare node, but I'm not going to do that. I'd rather it try and root and have multiple growth points this way. This was my first new leaf. I was so proud to see that leaf. It makes me so sad knowing that I'm chopping this right now. Very sad. And so this is kind of where it gets interesting here because you have multiple nodes. So I'm gonna have definitely some empty nodes. Yeah, so it makes it very interesting. I'm gonna keep this little leaf, so I'm gonna cut, axillary bud is right here. So I'm cutting right above that. So this one has its own axillary bud. And now I'm left with this bottom chunk and lots of nodes. So these are the rotted roots. We're getting rid of that. Now I have to decide what I want to do. This is very woody here on the end, so I doubt that this one would be viable. I'm gonna get rid of this chunk. So that one cut clean, so that's okay. That cut clean, so I'm trying to see where the node is. I feel like it would normally be here somewhere, but I don't know if I see it. I think instead of tossing this, I'll just keep it and see what it does, because it might just be covered up by this woody part and I can't tell. And yeah, so we will count this as an empty node. And this little guy here, so you have an axillary bud right there, there's one node, and there's an axillary bud right here, that's 2 nodes. There's an axillary bud right there, that's 3 nodes. There's definitely one here, that's 4. So I think this is 4 nodes, possibly. If I try and cut this, it's gonna be kind of risky. I think what I'll do is just end up leaving this as a piece. That way I'm not like chancing anything. So I'll have this, which is questionable, and then whatever decides to grow off of here, I can always cut this in the future. Because again, I could potentially have 4 growth points with this. So yeah, I'm gonna leave this like that. So we have all of our cuts here. I'm gonna let these dry while we work on the Monstera Aurea next. So I'm gonna let these sit off to the side, let them callus. And yeah, we'll do Miss Aurea and dump her out and see what she's looking like. We are back. I had to let my camera cool a minute. All right, I'm crossing my fingers that Aurea is gonna be okay. This is all I have. I have just like a tiny thing because my other bin, I used it for the moss and stuff. So I'm gonna try and very carefully dump her out into here. Let me bend you down a little bit. All right, so everything is wet because I just watered her last night. I was hoping that she would perk up. Oh, and that leaf, we are gonna save and frame that leaf because that's a sentimental leaf. Yeah, everything is rot. Well, at least I know. I probably should have chopped her initially, you know, instead of trying to keep like soaking the root system in hopes that it's gonna be okay. We're gonna cut and get rid of that. Yeah, there is no saving this root system. Everything's gone. I'm gonna lay her down. We're gonna remove these stakes real quick. Okay, have you bent down again? We're gonna do the same thing. We're gonna take a nice hefty top cut on her. Clean our shears. I have 2 leaves up here, and then I have a 3rd leaf. This will be a 4th leaf, and I think I don't want to do a huge top cut. So what I'll do is I think I'm going to cut right here. That'll leave me with a pretty hefty 4-leaf top cut. The axillary bud is on this side and here. So where my thumbs are the 2 axillary buds. So I'm basically cutting under this aerial root right here. So we're going to make our slice. Okay. Oh, that was so sad to do that, but it had to be done. And then once I'm done cutting, I'll pan out and show you all the cuts that I have, like further away, so that you can kind of see everything a little bit more closely. And then we will be sticking these guys in water, and then I'm going to show you what where I'm going to stick them, and I'm going to update you on the albo that I took cuttings of already. So yeah, same thing. We have an entire vine to work with here. I'm going to pretty much do the same thing. I'm just going to speed this up because yeah, it's literally the same thing. You'll see, let me show you. on one that's a little bit more of a different Monstera. So you have your axillary bud right here where my finger is. So I'm going to be cutting below this aerial root, and you want to find like the petiole, the leaf petiole, just follow that to where your finger and the axillary bud should be down in here. You just want to look for the eyeball on the stem. Axillary bud is there, so I'm cutting below this aerial root. Okay, she is cut. Okay, next one. Right, we are left with the bottom piece, so we're going to have some empty nodes. So I'm going to do in the middle of this one, that is the axillary bud right here. And we're going to do this one. Again, axillary bud is right here on that one. And the longer the stem you have, the better, because if it does decide to rot, you can cut into here and cut the rot away. So yeah, if you can leave longer space. Sometimes it's not possible depending on the internodal spacing. Some Monsteras it's pretty short, especially for the Monstera tie. But if you can make it longer, it's best. And this is the bottom. We are going to cut away this rot like so. Okay, and on this one here, that was the rotted main root, so it could potentially rot still. And the axillary bud is right here. So we have a pretty long stem. I'm just worried about that. So I'll probably spritz this with some hydrogen peroxide just to make sure that's not going to rot anymore. And so I'm left with 3 of the Aurea nodes, and then I have 2 of the albo nodes. I find that I love stratum, but I find that wet sticks tend to mold and rot more easily in stratum. So I have the best luck in moss with wet sticks, so I'm going to use moss for these guys. And yeah, everything else is going to go in water. So what I'm going to do is clean up this mess, let all my ends callus over for at least an hour or 2. The albo's been drying for, I would say, a good 30-40 minutes already, so I'll probably do that one first and then I'll move on to the Aurea. But again, I'm just going to let them callus, let those ends dry, because that's really important so they don't rot. And they could still rot, it happens, but it reduces that chance because you're cutting like through flesh basically. It's a wound, you're creating a wound, and that can cause bacteria and stuff to enter that wet tissue, so it's really important for it to dry. So just let it callus over for a good amount of time until it's no longer wet. It kind of changes and looks dry too, you can kind of see. I've let them sit out overnight before, and but yeah, it's not necessary to leave them out that long, but I will let them dry for at least a couple hours, or an hour at least. I'll check them, and then I'll pop back on and we'll show you what we're gonna do with everything. I have a lot of cuttings here. It's very sad, but it's okay. I actually handled it very well. Yeah, I just have to learn to not get so attached to plants, because Again, you can do everything right and something's out of your control and you can blame yourself and feel bad, but just know that you can grow plants back. It happens, you know, as long as the root system isn't shot and the node isn't shot, like you can grow it back, it'll be okay. Maybe it'll turn into, maybe it'll have like more nodes growing and it'll have a fuller, more bushier plant now. And once it roots, I can actually have a healthy root system and have it like grow and flourish and be the plant it was meant to be. I will be back on here in a little while and we'll finish up this video. And we're back. I got some supplies. The cuttings have been callousing for probably a little over an hour now. And I have the Aurea on this side and all the albos on that side. And then I have the little wet sticks there. So I have some supplies for the wet sticks. I'm using moss. And then I tried to find some glass vessels. I didn't realize we didn't really have that many glass vessels. I probably need to go get a couple more drinking cups, but we'll see. I'm running low on Starbucks cups too, because I usually use those for propping. But I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 here. I may have to get more. I'm probably going to add like 2 or 3 per vessel. I ended up cutting the long aerial roots off because it was just going to be too long to propagate in water. They'll grow new roots off of the aerial roots, so it didn't really matter how long they were or short they were. Again, I just want you to see how the ends have dried here. You can see there's no moisture left. So yeah, they are good to go into water. I did that clean slice with the X-Acto knife, so there's no like squeezing of the edge. And I'm going to make room for them here by my window, and I'm going to show you that once we're finished here. But yeah, let me sit you back up and we'll get to, you know, doing this part 2. All right, first things first, I wet the moss with tap water. And you guys know me and Superthrive, I love this stuff. Except it crusts around the edge and it drives me crazy. I'm gonna add a few drops in here and I'm gonna let the moss soak up some Superthrive. Now this isn't necessary by any means, but I don't know, we have some expensive nodes and I feel like just getting a little Superthrive soak moss will be better than just tap water. Who should we do first? Let's do the albo. Okay, so I get the small ones. And then this one was my favorite one because it gave me so much white. This one was next. So since these two are the smallest, we are gonna do, we could probably do one more in with these. Oh, I probably should have cut more aerial root off of that. Oh, let's see. Let's go with this one. This one's pretty white. It's a beautiful leaf. I'm surprised this one hasn't really browned too much. So we'll do these 3 into one vessel. I'll fill these up with water in a minute, but I'm just gonna divide them out. I'll eventually have to separate these into their own vessel. I actually might go to the dollar store and buy some glass vessels so that each one can be in their own little container, you know. So I'll probably do that this week and separate them. But for now, I'm just gonna stick them in one. So that's the first one. This is our top cut here. And let's do the top cut. We're gonna let the top cut be in her own vessel. That one. Yeah. All right, we're gonna have to trim these aerial roots a little bit. I'm gonna cut them. They're just too long. They'll be okay. Why don't we do all 4 of these in a container for right now? And again, like I said, I'm gonna go get some vessels and add them into their own little container. I'll probably just have like 20 vessels lined up at my window here of all Monstera albo. Okay, I think that'll be okay temporarily. Actually, I'm gonna take actually the smaller one and put it in with this one because there's a little bit more room in there. So I have 4 in this one, and then I have the top cut and 3 into here. All right, the Aurea, let's see. This is the only bigger vessel I could find, and the problem with vessels that have a smaller lip than width girth down here is when they start to root, it's gonna have a really hard time getting the root system out when it's smaller. So I don't like using these vessels, so I am gonna get a different one, but temporarily I'm gonna add the top cut into here if the roots will fit. Oh no, I don't know if the root system's gonna fit into here. Shoot. I need a bigger vessel. All right, they're gonna be a little squished temporarily. Okay, that's her temporary home. All right, we have 3 glass vessels left. This is one of my favorite leaves too. This one, the color on that is beautiful. Especially once it starts to get some water, it'll perk up and look beautiful. I'm gonna cut some extra aerial root here. So we'll do that one. And we'll do that one. Having a hard time fitting some of these. That one. Okay, this is one of the original bottom leaves left. I thought they both yellowed, but I guess not. This is one of them. Might not have to cut the aerials on that one. That one is good, that one is good. And then we have one bigger cutting left. We're gonna trim the aerials. Oh, the tight squeeze too. Actually, I don't like how tight that node is fitting. Let me try this one in here. It's a little bit more room. Okay, it's gonna have to work for now. All right, we're gonna let that kind of continue to callus before we fill up with water. And then next we're gonna work on the nodes. All right, so all the nodes, we have 1, 2, 3 Aurea. And again, I'm gonna have to trim these aerial roots some. I would have trimmed these already, except I wasn't thinking about it. And this one's a little too long. Shoot. I'm gonna bruise this a little bit. Oh well, it's okay. All right, 3 Aurea and 2 albo. So So I'm just gonna use these little plastic cups. I'm gonna fill them with moss, and we're gonna sit our node root end down like that, like kind of loosely on top. And then we're gonna cover it with plastic wrap to hold in humidity. And then actually I'm gonna make room for all 5 of these in my cabinet because I feel like they're gonna do the best in my cabinet as far as rooting and growing. So yeah, I'll have to make room for those. Okay, I have you pulled a little closer. It's taking some of our moss, and the moss you want to wring it out. So when you squeeze, you don't want hardly anything dripping. And you want it like light and fluffy, very light and fluffy. You don't want to pack too tight. Just like that. I'm going to stick one of our Aurea cuttings, wet sticks. Now the auxiliary bud is right here on it. So you don't really want to bury that, but I want to get that aerial root down. And it's just loosely in there like that. I'm going to do this one here and kind of speed up the rest of them. So with some plastic wrap, actually I'll be able to cut this in half. I'm going to take that like so and just kind of cover it. And then once the auxiliary bud starts popping out and growing, then I'll have to change the setup, but this is going to be temporary. And we're going to kind of tape that saran wrap all the way around. If I had some regular tape, this would be a lot easier. Okay, so I'm not leaving any holes or anything like that. I am gonna leave this in my cabinet like so. Like I said, it's very aerated. It's gonna lock in. It's gonna be like 100% humidity, especially being in my cabinet conditions. It's very loose, it's not buried. So that is the goal. So we're gonna do this 4 more times, and then I will just kind of speed up this process. I wanted to give you a look at the Monsteras that I already have propagating. These are off another albo that had rotted. So these are all in water and they're rooting nicely, and you can see some growth starting to activate. It's hard to see in here, but there's like an auxiliary bud there. And there's one right here that's activating. You can kind of see it from the top a little bit in there. So I just changed this yesterday, this water, but the most important thing when doing water propagation is to make sure the water is clean. So you want to change it at least every 4 or 5 days if possible. Clean water. This is just tap water, but make sure it doesn't sit for too long so that bacteria doesn't build up and rot the stems. And make sure it gets really high light. I'm going to change my brightness settings and show you, but in the window ledge is where I keep it there, and as much light as you can give it is really going to encourage those roots to form. And I'm going to show you the one that I have in stratum. The only thing with stratum is you can't really see the roots too much because they tend to root kind of deep within the stratum vessel, but you can see there's some rooting there on the bottom. Hi, Chai. Yes, my love. And I thought I saw some. Yes, there's some like right here you can see, but it's hard to make out and it's so dark so you can't really check the stem to see if it's rotting or not. I love stratum. It's worked for everything else, so I figured I would try it with the Monstera albo and compare it against the water. But they look very healthy, the cuttings. You can see that they're rooting nicely, or they look like perky. You see the leaves? That's how I can tell that they're doing good. I don't know, they look like they're hydrated to me. So you saw me filling up all the water vessels, and it's amazing how perky these guys are gonna get within like a couple days of some water rehydration, because you see how wilty they are because they've been dealing with rot for so long. There's just like no moisture. So as soon as they can take up some water, they're gonna look so much better and look a lot more plump. So I'm gonna make room for all those, like I said, right here. And then I have 5 little node vessels. I did this one first. You can already see a little bit of condensation happening in there because it's warm in here today. So yeah, I'm gonna make room for these in my cabinet, and then I'm gonna show you what everything looks like here in their spot. All right, I have adjusted my brightness down so you could see a little bit better. So I definitely need to take care of some props in my cabinet to make more room because things are getting very squished in here now. The only spot I could really find was in front of my anthurium seedlings, but I'm gonna rearrange this and take care of some props, like I said, probably soon, so I have more room. But I set them here in the front. They're all covered right there, so I can keep an eye on them, and they should do really well. I would prefer them to be on the bottom shelf so that they're closer to the light, so I'll probably end up moving them down there, but for right now they'll be fine like that. And then over here by the window, it's kind of a mess. Yeah, I'll probably end up rearranging this a little bit better, but again, I do want to separate these guys so that they're like individual cups and they can root and not get entangled in each other's root system, if that makes sense. I have my big top cut here, and then I have these 4 are Aurea, and then I have like 2 albo, and then I have the top cut albo in the window, and I have my Monstera mint in the window getting good light, and that's the vessel that's already rooting there. And then yeah, hopefully they'll all root and do well. I ended up adding this mother light up here, kind of shining towards them more, just to add a little bit more light. I especially really wanted it towards these 2 pots because these other albos here are the ones that I'm unsure are going to make it or not because they also had rot. The Tycons are doing well, but these ones I'm not sure. I just want to encourage a little bit more rooting action, especially since we've had a lot of cloudy days and there hasn't been as much light coming through. So I think this is going to help encourage rooting. It is the next day, and I wanted to give you a little peek at all the Monsteras. Actually, after I filmed yesterday, the plants, all the cuttings perked up within a few hours. And I just want you to see how hydrated they've gotten just with some water intake. Do you remember this leaf here? The smallest one was all crinkled. It is nice and firm. This new leaf here is like so plump now and hydrated. All the leaves are like perking up. It's so amazing. Everything looks happy and perky. I don't know if you can tell, but I can immediately tell a difference. Like they just feel firm. They look so much happier. They're not floppy. It's just amazing to me. I don't know. I can't explain it. It makes me so happy that I chopped them because, again, they were just doing so poorly, and seeing them like getting hydrated and happy again makes me so happy. I just want to show you the top cut here. Can you just see how hydrated it is now? It's amazing. Truly amazing. Yeah, I just wanted to throw this in the clip just so that you can get an idea of how much it's changed just with some water intake. And I will give you one more peek at the little nodes so you can see all that condensation that has formed. They are very warm. Again, I am going to move them to the bottom shelf. It's currently 78 degrees in my cabinet and humidity is at 79%. So yeah, they love, love, love these conditions in here. I hope this was helpful for you guys, and I'll keep you updated most definitely on how they're doing. I feel better now that it's been chopped and they're on their way to growing better. I was very sad this morning, but again, I didn't want to make this a sad video for you guys. I just wanted it to be a learning experience. So if you are curious on how to propagate Monsteras and wanted to know a little bit more about how I'm successful with propagating them, I really hope that you enjoyed this. If you have any questions, definitely leave me a comment down below. I would love to hear from you. And again, just to summarize, the best way to prop Monstera albo is with plain tap water, change it frequently every 4 to 5 days, and really highlight if you can. That's going to encourage rooting, and then making sure those ends dry or callous and using an X-Acto knife instead of shears. You are golden. So again, thank you so much, and I will talk to you guys later.